Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to cover the chapter on foundations of group behavior. So if you ever worked in a group, or if you have ever had the privilege or challenge to be a team leader, have you ever wondered why is it that in some groups you function well, and in some groups you don't function well? Would it be useful to know the reasons why? And like if you are appointed as a team leader, would it be useful for you to know how exactly to assemble your team so that you've got the best chances of success? So that's what this chapter is about. It's about first of all knowing what the different kinds of groups and teams and how to assemble an effective group. And how to manage the group for the most effective behavior. So right off the bat, we like to just make two crucial distinctions between groups and teams. So what are groups? Well, groups are two or more individuals who affect one another and have common objectives. So two or more persons can be considered a group, and they have common objectives and they affect one another. Now the main difference between groups and teams is that in teams are actually groups whose members help one another. So if you can triple underline help one another to achieve the common objectives, that's the main difference between teams and groups. So if I were to ask you, okay, in this class as a whole, are you a group or are you a team?
We are a group.
You're a group, right? Because you have a common objective and you affect one another, but you don't necessarily help everyone in the class, right? But when we divided you into the smaller groups for the project, are you now groups or teams?
Teams.
You're teams now, because why? You have to help one another to achieve the common objective. So lay people tend to use these words interchangeably, but I would suggest that for purposes of the exam or whenever you are doing business writing, you make the crucial the distinction between groups and teams and use the right word. Some examples of groups: you have formal group and informal work group. Well, formal groups are the designated work group defined by organization structure. Example, College of Business Administration, that's a formal work group. Informal work group is not formally structured or organizationally determined. So for example, any hobby group. The informal group is the hobby, recently some of us got together to play tennis regularly, so that's an informal group. Now, command group, a group composed of individuals who report directly to a given manager. So again, COBA, College of Business Administration, they can be seen as a command group because why? We report to the dean. Interest groups work, those working together to attain specific objective with each is concerned. So it could be like a stamp collection or any particular hobby. Task group, those working together to complete a job task. So for example, there's a project within a company and then task members are assigned to that task. So you consider that a task group. And lastly, a friendship group. People who join together because they're friends. The main difference between these two here is that here people get together because they're friends, in the friendship group, whereas in interest group people get together because they have a common interest. Now obviously these groups, they are not mutually exclusive, meaning they can overlap. For example, you can have a command group which is also the same as a task group. So there can be overlaps. So these are the different kinds of groups that you have. And why do people join groups? Well, people join groups for many reasons. They could be security. When you join a group, you are probably more safe, or you got better, or you will probably feel more safe compared to if you are doing things alone. Status, some groups have got high status, for example, like your BMW group or the Ferrari club, or this obviously it's got status. In universities, like if you are part of the Harvard Business School alumni, that's a good alumni to join. So that's status. Self-esteem, when people join groups, they feel better about themselves. That's a general human behavior. Human beings generally, they survive in groups rather than individually. Affiliation, when you join groups, you get to meet new friends, make new friends. Power, you have more power to bargain if you join a group rather than if you were to ask individually. That's why in organizations, not in UAE, but in some countries, you have unions, workers who get together to form a union and bargain with the management for higher salaries and shorter working hours. Sometimes they might get too powerful. And lastly, goal achievement. When you join a group, you're more likely to succeed, to complete a task or to succeed than if you're to do alone. Especially if you are trying to lose weight. You want to diet, then you join an exercise club, you'll be more motivated to exercise if you join, if you get together in a group to lose weight collectively rather than doing it alone. Now the stages of group development, or shall I say team development? I think stages of team development would be a better word to use. So there are 5 stages of team development according to a person by the name of Tuckman. Let me spell it out for you. Well, Tuckman. Tuckman, Tuckman. And he observed about 200 teams and groups, and he noticed that these groups tend to undergo 5 distinct stages of development. And he came up with this theory. Now the first stage is the forming stage. Now by the way, this is, as you know, this is relevant for your project. The first stage is the forming stage, and at this stage people get together just to get to know one another. There's much uncertainty if the members are new to each other. So they just spend the first few moments getting to know each other first. Now the second stage is called storming, and is characterized by intra means within group conflict. So that's why I call it storming, the word storm. So there's some kind of, some level of conflict, but of course not all conflict is bad, or we should not aim for zero conflict. A little bit of optimal conflict is good. So the storming stage is the stage where people start discussing, and to some extent disagreeing with each other. So for example, one person says, I think we should do A, and then another person might say, well, A is good, but I think doing B is better. So each person will come up with his or her ideas, and there's a discussion about the pros and cons. So that's why in your project, I deliberately asked you to come up with 3 alternatives so that you deliberately have this discussion. And the third stage is the norming stage. This is where it's characterized by close relationship and cohesiveness. The word norming means to agree. Really. The word norming is to agree. And at this stage, often the team agrees on what to do, how the task should be assigned, That means who is to do what, when and where. So that's a norming stage. And the next stage is the performing stage. This is when the team actually carries out the task. And lastly, it is the adjourning stage where the teams are finishing up on the activities and getting prepared to adjourn or disband. Adjourning means like disbanding, separating. And usually at the separation stage, there's a lot of insight, emotions as well as insight. Emotions like maybe positive emotions, mostly, hopefully. And maybe some insights, some lessons learned at the end of it. So, like the project that you're all doing, that's probably, the 6 weeks or slightly less than 6 weeks is probably the optimal time, because there you can see quite clearly the stages, from the forming and then to the storming. Probably now you're in the storming, and then I'm pressing you for the norming, which is coming to a decision on which project to do and start assigning the task, and then you have some time to perform the task. So, right. So that's the stages of group development, and it's characterized. It's presented in a diagram form like this. Now, what if the project just takes 1 day to carry out? Can you still see this? Yes, you can still see this, even though its project is for 1 day. But what if the project is 6 years, or maybe not 6 years too long, 2 years? What if the project is 2 years long? Well, that's where perhaps the stages are not so sequential. Where perhaps when you have a project for 2 years, you might go like here, and then when you're performing, you come across some problems, then you go back to the storming to solve the problems, and then go back here again. Or maybe while you are norming, when you agree on something, just about when you're about to perform, then somebody else joins your team. Happened to me once, when we're already in the stage of norming and going to performing, somebody joined our team and then start questioning, why did we do it this way, and then basically we went back to storming. So the longer the time taken to complete the project, the more you see the teams like going backwards, jumping back and forth across the stages. But when you have like a few weeks to do the project, then you probably see a more clearer sequence. So that's like a guide. It's not really to say that the teams rigidly follow through these steps, but it's a useful generalization that for a project lasting a couple of weeks, you can see these kind of stages. And another thing is that from the team leader perspective, a team leader should not panic when the team goes to storming. A team leader should not stop discussions or cut off objections like that. They should allow the teams to discuss. As long as the discussions are kept constructive, then the team should be allowed to storm. If you short-circuit this process, if you prevent that from happening, then you will not allow the healthy functioning of the team, and the team probably might not perform the best. So allow the team to gradually go through the 5 stages. Only if the discussion is too heated, too personal, then the team leader should intervene. Is that the only model describing teams? Well, there's many models out there, and the 5 stages of team development is by far one of the most talked about stages of team development. And there's another one, lesser known model, which is called the punctuated equilibrium model. And there's no need to know all these things. I'll just show you the diagram. and what do you need to take from this model? Well, what it says is that, okay, just say for example, you've got 6 weeks to complete the project, time between A and B, 6 weeks. So for the first couple of weeks, or for first week or two, you don't do anything about it. And then like halfway through, you realize, hey, we haven't done anything, we've got to, start working on it. And then there's a lot of activity here, and a lot of things done. And then you are almost finished with it, and you realize that you've got a bit of time, so you just let the dates go, and just before the final date, you finish up and you complete within time. So that's hopefully what is happening with all of you regarding that project. Okay, let me just, I left my marker in my car, that's the problem. Let me just type it on Word. Let me just find Word here. Right. Let me make this bigger. And the font will be bigger. Okay, so you can have homogeneous. Homogeneous or heterogeneous. We were talking about composition. So anyone like to guess what do the words mean?
Yeah.
Huh?
Homogeneous, that means all the parameters or the members inside, they are similar in some
Yes.
traits, and heterogeneous is the opposite of homogeneous.
Yes, very good, very good. So you all got that. Homogeneous means similar, heterogeneous means different, right, in terms of the parameters and the characteristics. Right, so which one do you feel is better in a team? Do you have homogeneous team members or heterogeneous team members?
Heterogeneous.
Hands up those who feel heterogeneous is better. Raise your hands. Okay. Majority. Hands up those who feel that homogeneous is better. Raise your hands. Not shaking your head. Never.
It should be different.
Never. Homogeneous. Well, usually in the class there are a number of people. Most people raise up their hand for heterogeneous, and for homogeneous, a few people like holding up their hand like that. But both of you will be right. Because it depends on the situation. Yeah.
For different projects or different groups is more practically used. The reason why the nature of the job or nature of the task normally is why this kind of people is different between people.
Yeah.
For example, football team, you don't need all in the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
most of the groups there.
Because they each have a role to play. Yeah.
And that's why we call it team. Team means everybody help each other.
Yes. Each have a role to play and a different role to play. So, if everyone is a striker, then there's no one left to guard the goal. Okay. Okay. Now, so that's composition. Is there anything else going to say? I think that's it. Okay, now, the next one is size. And size here actually refers to number of team members. It does not refer to the physical size of the team members. Sometimes I get okay. No. So size refers to the number of team members. So the more team members, the better, or the fewer the team members, the better, or what?
It depends.
Depends.
On the areas.
On the task, right? On the task, right? And too many is a problem. Too few also might be a problem, right? What is the optimal number would depend on the task in question. So, for example, in your that's why in your assignment, I noticed about 5 would be optimal. 3 or less would be too small. 8 or more we will have the problem of what you call passengers. or the more scientific term is social loafing. Okay, so let's go back to this. So size. So when you say too many, what would be the problem? You have what?
Conflict.
More conflict. Yes, actually, yeah. Too many, more conflict. What else? The passengers or social loafing.
There were no equal distribution or equal
All,
time.
yeah, it's all covered. Yeah, also
More time.
more time. Yeah, it's very good. Right? More time. When you have more people, then you actually need more time to come to an agreement. The social loafing means that whenever you have when you have too many people assigned to the task, some people will not be doing their fair share of the work. Like say for example, lifting up this table. If you have 3 people or 4 people lifting up this table, then presumably you have equal input. But what if you have 10 people lifting up this table? Maybe some people will be lifting up with their fingers and so on, or just placing the hands under the table. So you need to make sure that there's not too many people assigned to the job. Again, the magic number depends on how big the task is. The simpler the task, the smaller your numbers should be. And what would be the problem of too few?
Load and shortage.
The heavy workload per person, and what else is it? Yeah.
Stress, shortage.
Stress, yeah, that is the result of heavy workload. What else? I mean, that will result in stress. Anything else? 2 people only. Do you have any idea? No. Do you have any idea? No. Few ideas, right? Few ideas.
No creativity.
So that's essentially it.
Sir,
Yeah.
we used to take in the leadership class, there's like, for a group, it's different members besides, and the team should be different members. Specifically.
Norms are, like I said, unwritten rules of the team, and so there could be example like performance norms, appearance norms, social arrangement norms, and allocation of resource norms. These are just acceptable standards of behavior within a group that is shared by the group's members. Now I want to talk about this together with the next one, which is, we'll skip this one for the time being, which is the last one, which is cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is the degree to which team members are united, they are attracted to each other and are motivated to stay in the group, or they are, close to one another. Okay? Now, do you feel that cohesiveness is important in a team? Do you feel like cohesiveness is useful in a team? To feel a sense of being united? Do you feel that it's better to have team members who are united versus they're not united? Yeah. Generally, yes. That's why we have team building courses where people become united. They are attracted or they're close to one another. So generally, I would say the more cohesiveness, the better. I'll just put one exception or one proviso for that. The proviso is that the norm, going back to the previous slide, or the norm is like acceptable standard of behavior. The norm should be do the best that you can, or perform the best to the highest level that you can. If that is the norm and the team is cohesive, then it's a good thing. So team members or managers, what they should first ensure is that the norm is, do the best that you can, perform to the highest level first. Then only make the team members cohesive. Why do I say it? Well, what happens if the norm is the opposite, like do the least that you can? take as many breaks as possible, do as little as possible. That if that is the norm, and the people are cohesive, will you have a problem? Yes, you'll have a bigger problem. You have a bigger problem than if the teams were not cohesive. Okay, so that's so the two should be looked at together. The norm should be performance norms, perform to the highest level that you can, and then cohesiveness, which is make the team as feel united as possible. So how to make the team more cohesive? Well, these are 7 examples. First of all, make the group smaller. Now, this only works when if the reason for the lack of cohesiveness is that the team is too large. If the team is like 15 members and you find that there are subgroups within that team, then it's an indication that you should divide that team into a smaller team. Make the group smaller. Encourage agreement with group goals. Increase time members spend together, have more meetings, outings together, maybe. Increase group status and admission difficulty. Make it more difficult to enter the group and make the group more prestigious. Maybe give them a fancy name and give them recognition and praise. Stimulate competition with other groups. I'll come back to this in a short while. Give rewards to the group and not individuals. Now this is very important, especially during in my job evaluation and performance class. We always talk about if you want to encourage people to work in a team, when it comes to rewards, you should reward the team as a whole rather than individually. Because if you reward individually and then you ask them to work in a team, guess what? They will not really be wholeheartedly working in the team. And physically isolate the group. I mean, if possible, send them to desert safaris or outings, team building courses out there in the jungle or in the desert. So that will make the team more cohesive. Stimulate competition with other groups. So coming back to this. Now, similar competition with other groups it increases the within team cohesiveness. But if you are making this team compete with other teams in the same organization, you might have a problem. Because then they might sabotage each other. And that's the last thing that you want to happen in an organization where departments are fighting against each other within the same organization. I would say similar competition with other groups in other organizations, not in the same organization. These 4 factors are specific to teams. Other factors like motivation, experience, rewards, they apply to teams as well as individuals, but these are the 4 that are specific to teams, so you should pay attention to them. Right, synergy. Why do people form teams? Well, the result is, okay, let me ask you, accountants, what is 2 plus 2? It's not a trick question. 2 plus 2 is 4, right? Yeah. Any accountant will tell you that, right? But with social loafing, when people are not performing up to their task, 2 plus 2 is less than 4, maybe a 3 for social loafing. But for synergy, 2 plus 2 equals 5 or more. Where when people get together, they actually are able to do a lot more than their collective individual efforts. And that's what we call synergy. And a good manager can achieve, or good team leader can achieve this synergy. The average team leader or manager, 2 plus 2 equals 4. The bad manager or team leader, 2 plus 2 is 3 or less.
Sir, I didn't understand.
Yeah? 2 plus 2 is, to have a team, there'll be some things that you gain and some processes or things that you lose, and the final result is the actual group effectiveness. Now, decision making. Now, generally, groups make better decisions than individual. That's the general statement. Because why does team or group decisions generally are better? Well, because you've got more complete information, increased diversity of views, and you have also increased acceptance of the solutions. Meaning that if the team members themselves decided on what to do, they are more motivated to carry it out, compared to if somebody told them what to do. So that's the strength of group decision making. There are obviously weaknesses where it's more time consuming. Remember, if you have a 1 hour meeting with 10 people, 10 team members, it's not just 1 hour that you've lost, it's 10 hours, 10 person hours. So it's more time consuming. Increased pressure to conform and domination by one or few members, and ambiguous or unclear responsibility. And the worst thing is when you have domination by one or few members, because what happens is that the decision appears to be made by the team, but because of the domination by one or few members, it's actually an individual decision making. And that's what groupthink is about. Groupthink, very complicated definition there. Let me give you the simpler one. Groupthink is when the decision appears to be made by a group, but in reality, it is made by one person in the group and he or she is not the expert. So the definition describes about where the team members by themselves, they are maybe lazy and they don't want to spend time discussing about the task. So one person says, I think we should do A. And then the rest just agree, okay, fine, let's do A, without discussing about the pros and cons of A and comparing with the pros and cons of B. And that's why I deliberately force you to come up with 3 alternatives for your project, because I'm preventing groupthink here. By forcing you all to come up with 3 projects and discuss the pros and cons of each, you at least have a choice of 3 to choose one activity. So that's how to prevent groupthink. You force people to come up with at least 3 alternatives. Because think about it, how often is your first idea the best one? Sometimes it can be, right? But not every time. Not even half the time, I'm sure. So, okay, how to prevent groupthink? Well, force teams to come up with at least 3 options. The team leader should not state his or her preference, but ask the team members first for their opinion. The team leader should not state his or her opinion, but ask from the team members first. Then only make a decision. Because often, even though the team leader might not intentionally be dominant, but in some societies, where it is considered rude to disagree with your superior, then the team members will just wait for what the team leader thinks and then just agree with that team leader. Even though inside they might disagree, but they verbally just agree with the team leader. And that's where groupthink can happen as well. But obviously, if you have a team leader who is egoistic and don't want to reduce power, then there's nothing much you can do. If the team leader is very dogmatic, very dominant, enforce his or her decisions on the team members, then there's nothing that team members can do. So that's on groupthink. So it's actually not the thinking done by the group, it's actually thinking by one person within the group. Group shift. Group shift is they say a change in decision risk between the group's decision and the individual decision that members within the group would make can be either towards conservatism or greater risk. Let me put it in a slightly different way. It's basically group shift is that the members' decision to accept or reject a certain proposal is stronger after the meeting compared to before. Think about it. Maybe on a scale of, say, talking about expansion of the company. Maybe before the meeting, the individual believes on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very strongly feeling and 0 is against or neutral, then maybe the person is 5 or 6 before the meeting. But at the meeting, that person discovers that other people also share the view. Then their conviction increases to 9 or 10. They're more sure after the meeting compared to before. Think about it. Perhaps maybe before you join this university, you're halfway in between, and then you find out that some of your friends have also joined this university. Then your conviction to join is stronger. It can be either in the positive or in the negative. So if you are reluctant to do something and you find also your team member or your friends or your team members feel the same way, then you become sure not to do that thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's like follower instinct. Sometimes we call it herd instinct, like cattle, sheep, or
So
cows.
the
They
group-
move together in a group. So it's been like
The
that.
group take this decision.
Something happens when there's a problem which the normal rational thinking cannot solve that problem. The normal rational thinking failed to come up with a solution. Then you have a brainstorming, which you normally call your team or those involved into a room, sometimes even at a hotel to make them away from the organization. And you present the problem, and then you ask each person for their suggestion and write them on the board without any criticism at that stage. You ask each and every one what is the idea, and you would encourage the ideas to be as radical or as creative, even to the point where it doesn't make sense sometimes. You want those kind of ideas. You write them on the board without any criticism. But once you have written them on the board, then only you will start to evaluate each alternative. And of course, when evaluating, you're not saying that it's a stupid idea or whatever, but you're saying that okay, maybe we cannot practice it as it is, but what can we take from that? What lesson can we draw from that idea? And that's how solutions can be arrived at for the more difficult